There's a fundamental capture of historical change that life exhibits in its evolution. Existence and non-existence for an individual life form is pretty cut and dry. 1, I'm present. 0, I don't exist at times before and after me. So anything I do that keeps me as a 1 can only be seen as a success for me. So it's reasonable to assume, as evolution is deterministic to a degree, ideas that keep an individual life form alive at a certain point in its evolution and the history of the environment it inhabits are ideas that will perpetuate because the life form continues to live to perpetuate them. So it's reasonable to assume that certain ideas will appear again and again in any universe where individual agents evolve and have to survive in an environment with limited resources and in which life is a threat to other life. So in this sense, we can see a use for separating truth from useful ideas that may not be true. Since we live in an information age now, I think the usefulness of the story that deviates from truth is no longer necessary. In the information age, I actually think it's one of the biggest hindrances we have to deal with. That being said, evolutionary epistemology has a very practical place in separating ideas that are determined through evolution, that are scientifically accurate, and ideas that can be understood through perception and measurement tools that are also accurate. We should get away from any kind of thinking that attempts to underpin fallacious thinking with pseudo-necessity. Let's talk about evolutionary epistemology. Evolutionary epistemology is an approach to understanding knowledge and the process of knowing that applies principles from evolutionary biology. It suggests that the development of human cognitive structures, scientific theories, and belief systems can be understood through the lens of evolutionary processes, such as natural selection and adaptation. There are two main aspects of evolutionary epistemology: biological evolutionary epistemology. This perspective sees human cognitive capacities like perception, memory, and reasoning as adaptations that have evolved to help us survive and reproduce. Just as physical traits evolve through natural selection, cognitive traits have developed to allow humans to navigate and make sense of the world more effectively. Scientific evolutionary epistemology. This applies the evolutionary framework to scientific theories and knowledge itself. It suggests that theories evolve over time through a process akin to natural selection. In this view, scientific ideas are subject to variation, competition, and selection, where less effective theories are discarded and more successful ones survive and continue to be refined. In both cases, evolutionary epistemology emphasizes that our understanding of the world is not necessarily a direct reflection of reality, but rather a set of useful adaptations that have been shaped by our interactions within the environment. Knowledge is thus seen as provisional and subject to change as it adapts to new challenges or evidence. Key ideas of evolutionary epistemology. Cognitive adaptations. Our cognitive abilities are seen as biological adaptations that have evolved to help us survive and reproduce. For example, our ability to recognize patterns or make predictions about the future might have been advantageous in ancestral environments. Natural selection of knowledge. Just as biological traits are subject to natural selection, knowledge itself can be seen as evolving through similar processes. Theories and ideas that are more adaptive to our environment are more likely to survive and be passed on. Limitations of human cognition. Evolutionary epistemology recognizes that our cognitive abilities have limitations. These limitations might be due to the constraints of our evolutionary history or the specific environments in which our brains developed. Criticism of evolutionary epistemology. Criticism of evolutionary epistemology often revolves around several key issues. Truth versus adaptation. Evolutionary epistemology suggests that our cognitive faculties and beliefs have evolved because they helped our ancestors survive and reproduce. However, just because a belief or cognitive process is adaptive does not necessarily mean it leads to truth or accurate knowledge about the world. Critics argue that survival and reproductive success do not guarantee a direct correspondence between our beliefs and objective reality. Epistemic relativism. Some critics argue that evolutionary epistemology can lead to epistemic relativism, where all beliefs are seen as equally valid adaptations rather than being judged on their truthfulness. If knowledge is merely a product of evolutionary processes, then it might be difficult to establish objective criteria for distinguishing true knowledge from false beliefs, undermining scientific realism. Evolutionary epistemology can be seen as undermining scientific realism, which is the view that scientific theories aim to accurately describe the world as it is. By framing knowledge as an adaptive tool rather than a mirror of reality, this approach may suggest that scientific theories are just useful instruments rather than accurate representations of the world, thereby challenging the notion that science gets us closer to the truth. Limits of biological analogies. Critics also point out that applying biological evolutionary principles to epistemology may involve overstretching biological analogies. While natural selection is a well-established process in biological evolution, using it to explain the development of knowledge and scientific theories may oversimplify or misrepresent the nature of intellectual and cultural evolution, which involves conscious thought and decision-making processes that differ significantly from biological evolution. Circular reasoning. Some argue that evolutionary epistemology can be circular, as it uses human reasoning, a product of evolution according to the theory, to justify evolutionary epistemology itself. This may raise concerns about the reliability of the argument, as it depends on cognitive faculties whose validity is being questioned. Overemphasis on adaptation. Another critique is that evolutionary epistemology tends to overemphasize adaptation and natural selection, neglecting other factors that contribute to the development of knowledge. Cultural, social, and historical influences also play a significant role in shaping our understanding, and these may not always align neatly with an adaptive explanation. These criticisms highlight the limitations and potential pitfalls of applying evolutionary principles to the study of knowledge, even as the approach offers valuable insights into the development of human cognition and the nature of scientific progress. Let's get out there and stop misinformation wherever you see it. Do it all for truth, actual truth, correspondence. Do it for progress. Let's be scientific. Let's do it to keep peace. If you like this kind of philosophical subject matter, help us out by liking the video and subscribing to the channel.